Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special webinar brought to you by Times Higher Education and Coursera. I'm Phil Beatty. I'm the Chief Knowledge Officer at Times Higher Education, or THE for short. We're here to explore future student learning pathways in the context of European higher education. We've brought together a fantastic group of leaders from both academia and industry, from right across the European continent, to explore how to develop effective new propositions for learners of the future. We'll be looking in particular at university-industry collaboration, and we have some exclusive survey results to share and discuss slightly later on in the session. But we have an awful lot to pack in for just 1 hour. So let me introduce our great panel and get into the conversations. Joining me today, we have Mark Andrews, a pedagogical evangelist at Adobe. What a wonderful job title. I think I'd like a title like that. We have DK Oninawa, who is Director of Partnerships at Coursera for Campus, who of course are our partners for this session. We have Doug Cole, Deputy Director of Employability at Nottingham Trent University. Renata Tomaskova, the Vice Rector for International Relations at the University of Australia. Anastasia Menina, Vice Rector for International Affairs at St. Petersburg Electro-Technical University, or LETI, of course, in Russia. Hussein Bagirov, Rector, Western Caspian University in Azerbaijan. Patrick Glorner, the President of Artificial Intelligence at Deggendorf Institute of Technology. So, it's good to see you all. We have a fantastic panel, a really packed agenda. I see the delegates are joining us rapidly, so we'll kick straight off into the Q&A session. And perhaps we could start by addressing a key question, which is really around university and industry collaboration. But please do post questions in the Q&A box. And as far as the panel's concerned, I'm going to welcome them jumping in. We're going to keep this very conversational. But perhaps I could introduce the first question to you, Mark, from an industry perspective from Adobe. And I wanted to ask, just very generally, really, how can universities more effectively work with industry to embed skills into the curricula and close the sort of skills gaps that we have seen increasingly being raised by industry? There's a bit of a gap between universities and industry in terms of skills. What's your approach? How do you work with universities? How can we advise universities to better integrate with industry partners?
Yeah, I think, well, it comes, I think, from everybody understanding each other's perspectives better. And I think it comes from industry understanding the situation, the opportunities that universities offer to industries, and it also comes from industry really understanding the opportunities and the benefits of working with universities. So I'm someone who's come from a university and is now working at Adobe, and what we really find is it's being that kind of link between, you know, Adobe and our customers, and also with universities as well, and finding out what are those trends, what are those things that are happening. We know that, you know, in a post-pandemic world, you know, we don't probably overplay the data and what we're finding around the pivot to the digital transformations that are happening and the digital first world that we're about, and how we can then work with universities to support them in supporting and embedding some of these skills and abilities within their curriculum. And that's really the focus of my role at Adobe, and a lot of the work that we do is how can we support and embed these skills within their curriculum. But I think it comes from a point of partnership and collaboration and really a lot of dialogue between the two parties.
And do you think universities sometimes can be quite challenging to work with? There's sometimes a culture clash, isn't there, around how quickly universities are able to move, how agile they are. I think they've proven in the pandemic response that they can be extraordinarily agile and fast moving. We need to harness that. Is that something you come up against as someone who's worked on both sides?
It's an interesting question. I think it depends on the culture of the institution and their own links and their own objectives, and really what they see as their value proposition. So I think we've got some universities that are really engaged with industry and working with industry to transform that change, and others that maybe they've got a slightly different kind of focus. And so I think it really depends on what the offer and what the proposition is for that university and how they want to support their graduates going forward.
Sure. Perhaps I could turn to you, DK. Obviously, from Coursera's perspective, there's been an extraordinary boom in digital remote education, obviously forced by a pandemic, but clearly there's a sense that there is an awful lot of positives we can harness from this this rapid acceleration. I think Coursera was around 80 million learners now. What's your perspective around how this sort of acceleration of digital education can really support closing that skills gap, and really encourage that sort of collaboration between universities and industry in terms of what students will be needing for the future workforce?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Phil. Pleasure to be here. Very nice. Thank you very much for joining everyone around the world. So I think really what we see here at Coursera, and actually a slight correction for we're actually now pushing to the 95 million users around the world, which is great. And I think that's very much highlighted exactly how there's been such a forced pivot shift from sort of classroom-based learning to online over the past 20 or so months. I mean, certainly what we are able to benefit from is using the data-driven insight that we have from our 95 million users around the world, which it comes across from various sectors. So our three main sort of divisions within Coursera are Coursera for Government, Coursera for Campus, and Coursera for Business. And when we pull together a lot of the user data and individual user data that we see, we get a very clear insight as to what industry needs and where those potential skills gaps are. And what we've seen, especially with the given the rate of change over the past few months, we see businesses now focusing more on when hiring, they're not simply just looking at the degree from the university, they're looking at a specific degree level and also a industry related skill that graduates can actually demonstrate. So when it comes to points like, issues surrounding the fourth industrial revolution, for example, areas, whether it be blockchain, whether it be digital marketing, whether it be C programming or experience design or computational thinking, these are sort of the skills of the future, which is currently, there is a gap currently existing within that. And what we are able to do with institutions is help to fill those gaps. We're not trying to pave over the road, it's effectively filling the potholes along the way by incorporating specific skill sets which people can actually look to either reskill or upskills themselves in response to those demands of the work of the future.
Excellent, thank you. And I wondered if we could bring in a university perspective here. We've heard from our colleagues from outside the sector, work very closely with the sector, but perhaps I could turn to you, Anastasia. Obviously, Leti is close to industry and in its sort of foundations. How do you work to make sure your graduates are really in tune with what the workforce of the future really requires, and how do you identify the skills gaps that you need to deliver and fill as a university?
Hello, everybody. Hello, Phil. Thank you for invitation. Yes, our university team and our university is in a very deep connection with industry and with our partners. So first of all, as we think it's necessary to start thinking about our program from the graduate image. And we understand that today everything is very rapidly changed, and we have to think about what skills will be necessary, not tomorrow, but maybe after 3 or 5 years. That's why we are in constantly communication with our partners, and we develop a very high level of education and high level of cooperation with our partners in such priority areas as artificial intelligence and computer science, wireless technology, biointerface, medical systems and complexes. That's why it's very different spheres from one side, but from another side we understand that using modern technology, using digital technology today, it's very convenient to do our work properly.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to come in that sort of general sense of Patrick? Please do come in on this point.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. So in my university, Deggendorf Institute of Technology, in order to become a professor, you need to have worked for at least 3 years in industry. So all of our professors have a PhD, we have research experience, but we have also worked in industry. So I think this really helps us. So we have the mindset, we know what we need to do, so things actually work in the real world. In addition, a lot of our professors, including myself, we do consulting on the side. So I keep working with industrial partners every week, and I help them solving their challenges. And the things I learn, I can directly transfer to the classroom and tell my students about a new project they've been working on and some of the challenges that I face. So I can consistently contribute some real world insights in class. Our students have to do a mandatory internship during their studies. So they do a 6-month internship in industry. That helps them also to see what's actually going on in the real world. We invite industrial partners for guest talks. We do projects with industry. So we're very close to the real world and prepare our students for the real challenges that they will face once they graduate.
Yeah, that's a really interesting approach on the professorship point there, that there's a requirement that you've worked in industry. That's quite unique, I understand. Does anyone look at this? So DK was mentioning that this extraordinary data that's emerging. There's this sense that we are perhaps almost, have an embarrassment of riches now in terms of the actual data, in terms of what it tells us that people are needing, requiring, what courses people are looking for. And we'll talk in a moment about some specific skills. We've got some survey results from the audience around prioritization of types of skills, and we'll go into detail. But is anyone sort of looking to the data and obviously organizations like Coursera to help bridge some of these gaps? Renata, would you like to come in?
Yes, I must say that actually my university is a comprehensive university, so it's always more difficult for us that we do not actually include programs in engineering or technology. So I must admit we are not that close to industry in everyday life as technical universities are, because we have a lot of humanities and social sciences. But still we are aware that even, students studying humanities or social sciences will be expected to have some artificial intelligence awareness and things like that, and skills related to this. So what we are doing, we are working on the graduate profiles, which I think Anastasia mentioned as well, that's crucial. Each degree program has a board, which includes actually also somebody from the industry. So somebody who's outside university and is not necessarily connected only to the sphere of social, let's say, institutions, but also industry. So we would like to have direct feedback on what we are doing in degree programs. And then also we've been working on the implementation of internships kind of across the university, across the faculties. So not only the traditional internships, but degree programs that are by nature related to something you need to do in practice, but actually for all students. So I would say interdisciplinarity, that's a big challenge. And for us also, we see it as a way how to solve the potential a skill gap or gaps, potential gaps in skills our graduates might have.
Thank you. And I think it'll be really good in the second half to really drill down into the types of skills that are needed for the future and how universities can deliver, because I personally believe there is a real unique position for universities in those sort of interdisciplinary areas, in the problem solving element, the research-based aspects of giving people resilience. So we'll explore that in a lot of detail. But and just to say to the audience, I can see questions coming in through chat and Q&A. I'd suggest if you could put questions in Q&A, it's a little bit easier for me to make sure we prioritize and we spot them. So please do add into the Q&A box, and we'll bring those questions to the panel very soon. I just wondered if we could expand this a little bit around the importance of internationalization. University industry collaboration, I think, has been accelerated. The gap's been closed through the availability of data through organizations like Coursera, who can really provide some bridges there. But I'm just wondering how important it is to remain international in our focus in terms of student pathways, to ensure students are exposed to different cultures, different educational environments. I don't know who'd like to come in on this, but I know we haven't spoken to Hussein yet, or you, Doug, but Hussein, would you like to come in on that? What's your approach to seeking to create international pathways for students, making sure they still get those international experiences?
Thank you for giving me a word. Hi, everybody. And I was thinking while other speakers was talking about the previous question, that even if not pandemic, probably we would be challenged with the necessity of serious changes in education in general and higher education. And when pandemic forced us to go in certain directions, we discovered that so-called forced tool, which we have to use by conditions. I mean, online education, online resources, etc. We're already here, available, waiting for this moment. And I mean, we had to go with understanding root of problems of higher education and solving them anyway. Just this situation speeds up all processes, force us to go more oriented to this towards this problem. Talking about internationalization, I guess situation dictates to universities not just compete between each other, but cooperate and collaborate to exchange some innovations which helps them to avoid difficulties created by a situation, to introduce innovative ways of improving quality of education, making it closer to needs of society, industry. And when I say industry, it does mean that just for the areas of engineering or business, but all areas where students are able then, based on the education, be employed.
Thank
and
you.
By the way, it was a very good stress by Coursera, Dig, which Coursera is one of most important partners of our university when we trying to add to academic courses, so-called micro-credential courses. And even around 200 of our students will get in the end of the semester credits for those portion of credits which university is free to award students based on regulated by ministry and government programs, education programs. Just because those courses selected by students in combination was very good addition to academic courses, gives not only just skills, soft skills or hard skills, but just a deep understanding of how to connect this academic knowledge with practical needs of their future life when they will be employed and will work. We expanding our center for internship and development of students and alumni. And now we see that probably we'll need to establish another center of cooperation, which will have slightly different, similar but different tasks, to try to take students of not only third, second, but even first year for 1 day or 2 days, 3 days a month, or 1 day a week, to industry, to space, a workplace of industry where they will have classes or just get familiar with how the academic knowledges have connected with areas where they're going to work in the future.
Sure.
And we're expanding our partnership with other universities during this semester, which will be over soon, where 27 professors from different countries, starting from Indonesia, Malaysia, India, United Kingdom, Germany, United States, delivering courses online to our students. But it wasn't not only a sort of a forced action to replace physical face-to-face class with online and using opportunity. It was a very good chance for students to listen really prominent professors, carriers of unique knowledges from different countries, which gives a lot of benefits, encourage students to be more active in the educational process, makes the educational process more colorful, rise the activity in taking place this process.
Yeah, and certainly there's been a sense that I think, you know, what's been forced upon us by the pandemic has been all sorts of, you know, benefits to the students in terms of personalization, tailoring, using that data to support their individual learning pathways, introducing them to a wider range of lecturers and speakers, because you can really draw on a much greater pool, and understanding, I guess, of their personal circumstances as well. So really lots of great benefits in terms of student learning. Doug, did you want to come in on this general point, and before we start having a look at some of the specific skills?
Yeah, sure. No, yes. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, delighted to be here. I just wanted to follow up with, obviously, as you said, Phil, internationalization, crucially important now more than ever. And I suppose it's no shock to many people that, you know, I've heard a lot this morning from the different speakers around this notion of skills. And my question is, what are we talking about? And that will, I think, will lead in well to the survey results that you're going to share shortly. But I think on the internationalization point, just to kind of highlight the value of experiential learning more broadly. So not just the kind of working abroad, but also study abroad, and actually how that develops us as people. And so I think, you know, technical skills are always going to change, and you know, and we need to have that mindset where, as lifelong learners, that we're always going to need to adapt and flex and continue to learn throughout our lives. And so I think the value of studying abroad as well, and what that can bring to a person, you know, being a part of another culture, traveling, you know, and adapting language, you know, working with another language, etc. I think that the value of that, when you get underneath the skin of it, in terms of perhaps resilience or self-efficacy, you know, the bravery, taking risks, all of those things are crucial. And for me, none of those are skills. You know, this is about attitude, behavior, and other personal capabilities. And so I just think that we have a lot of students come to study in the UK, and I do wonder, you know, there's always been, how many of us are going out to study overseas as well, and are we really asking the right questions of them to help them fully understand that depth of learning that they are achieving through those experiences too? So it was just a play for, you know, looking at study abroad and work abroad as opportunities in this space. And I think we need to, given that there is so much competition coming in terms of placements, which are a traditional solution to a lot of this within this employability agenda, and there just isn't enough placements for everyone. If you've got colleges, schools, and universities all competing, and so opening up the borders, looking at this from a global perspective, and considering the different types of activities, I think are all crucial moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting, isn't it, that so much of the talk now is around, given that the world moves so quickly and skill sets become obsolete quite quickly, in terms of, certainly in certain industries, that sense of character, that sense of resilience, that they are characteristics that can be instilled through educational environments, but not necessarily skills that can be taught. So there's an interesting question. I might come to this question right now, actually, from because it's quite profound. Aravinda Ram has said, are traditional degrees, or also do traditional degrees remain relevant in light of skills-based digital education, which is also quicker to attain in comparison? So the idea of maybe the micro-credentials, the bite-sized chunks, the constant reskilling around technical knowledge, for example, that comes, you know, that's much more readily available, versus the traditional degree, the immersive experience, research-intensive environments, often residential, that may be more likely to build a character. Mark, I can see you've got your hand up. Do you want to tackle that more rather profound question? Oh, and sorry, I think there we
go. That's a fantastic question. I would resoundingly say yes, there is. But I think we need to build a bit more abstraction within our curriculum designs that afford for skills as they to come in without, you know, without having to redesign the whole degree. So they can be more agile in their design, that we can slot in relevant skills as they need to. So yes, because I think we need this, and this is one of the great advantages that we don't want to lose with universities. Universities, you know, a student coming through an undergraduate degree at a university should be a time for them to be able to experiment, for them to play, for them to just see what they want to be, what they want to do. And it's a unique environment where you can be really doing that interdisciplinary work, where you can be speaking to experts in their fields and really kind of playing and learning. And this is what we're finding as we're working with institutions of how we can integrate things like Creative Cloud through our Creative Campus program, the skills of digital literacy to be that kind of that kind of enabling platform that enables students to address their academic work whilst also developing some of those resilient mindsets and skills that Doug's just highlighted. And I think there is certainly space for that. But I think it's maybe just thinking and making our degree programs not so rigid so that they can flex as needs be. And I think we're seeing that through, in a post-pandemic world, when we're looking at as universities, how can we have more flexible study options? How can we support different types of learners and different learner groups, that this kind of change will come. And that's kind of my hope, really.
Can I just bring you back in, DK, on that point? Coursera, often seen as, a great disruptor. You could argue that it's sort of slightly threatening to traditional universities, traditional degrees, but also can be extremely complementary. Can you sort of tackle that issue head on in terms of Coursera's role?
Yeah, sure, of course. I'm glad you called on me. I was about to raise my hand multiple times to jump in, but no, certainly, I think the word disruptiveness within education is always looked upon as a rather negative phrase. I think we're not trying to bring about a revolution within education. We're trying to bring an evolution in education, if anything. And when we also talk about, when we talk about internationalization, when we talk about sort of the personalization, I think, which we're going to raise as well. I think as a result of what the question was earlier by Aravinda in terms of whether degrees remain relevant, absolutely, of course they do. I think they will always be relevant so long as they, of course, adapt and evolve with the times. And that is not necessarily simply based upon the topic which are being discussed and shared with students, but it's also about the mode and the method in which that information is being transferred. I think we're seeing more and more campuses moving away from what is effectively a standardized model of education, and one which is basically being tailored a little bit more around the student preference and the student approach. And again, when we come to internationalization, which we talked about earlier, using Germany as an example, for example, just in this instance, I think in Germany there are about 2.8 million students, of which there are around just under 400,000 come from internationally around the world. During the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic, we saw that number dip down to 32% of what the 2019 numbers were. And as a result, we're seeing more and more institutions opening up international hubs, virtual international hubs, or e-universities, to try and attract those international students, to at least provide them with some content on a remote basis, but while still giving them the full benefit of being involved with that said university.
Thank you. And Doug, did you want to come in as well on this?
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to kind of maybe to counter that. I do think we need more of a revolution. I don't think evolution is going far enough. I think that we've been having this narrow focus on knowledge plus skills equals success for a long time, particularly in the UK, and I'm sure different countries will vary. I'm not saying it's the same around the world, but I am seeing similarities in other countries around the world in terms of this huge focus on knowledge plus skills equals success. Employers tell us what skills is you want, and we'll plug it into the curriculum in this linear fashion. It doesn't work. It's flawed, and we've been talking about skills gaps in the UK since the 1960s with the Leash Report and the Robbins Review and all these other government papers talking about skills gaps. 60 years later, over 60 years later, we're still here talking about skills gap. Actually learning it in its original format, it's about so much more than just knowledge and skills. So I think a lot of it is not new. It's unpacking what we've already got, making the implicit explicit, and recognizing how we're developing people, their values, their character, their capabilities, their attitude. And so you can get those digital badges, those that support you around technical skills areas, but the value of a degree is so much more in terms of that student identity, who you are and who you want to become. And until we shift the narrative and highlight to these people that we're saying lifelong learning is crucial, well, let's stop telling them that just getting skills is going to lead to success, because which employers are hiring on skills? You're hiring on who's the right fit, who's going to come in, who's got that passion, who can work with other people, emotional intelligence, can engage with people. And I think we have to shift this narrative. Skills might open the box, but actually underneath that, let's let's take responsibility for telling learners that actually to be successful takes so much more than that. Let's talk about attitude and behavior and all these other things that looking at learning in a more holistic way. And so I don't think our current system, and I'm a 15-year-old son who's going through the school system here in the UK, all they care about is knowledge. There is no, primary school, there was a focus on being nice and respectful. Secondary school, it's about grades, numbers, league tables. College, schools, all of us are the same, and it's taking our eye off the things which are harder to measure, and that plays to some of your results. So I'm not trying to tease, Phil, but about how do you develop things and how do you measure success in these particular areas. So yeah, I'll get off my soapbox now.
It's good to see such passion, and I think there is that real sense, isn't it, that certainly as we push towards the fourth industrial revolution, it's all about learning to learn, learning to change, learning to pivot, learning to have multiple careers. It does feel it's about resilience, intercultural understanding, creativity, problem solving, a lot of things that are challenging. So why don't we have a look at these survey results? We've just got a very quick slide just to show the audience's responses to prompt the second section of the debate. So I think one of my colleagues might be able to just share the screen. So really, and I guess I might go straight back to you, Doug, on this, but we asked just everyone on the call here today, just before the event, to talk about prioritization. And first of all, you can see there what skills are valued most by your institution. Obviously, academic knowledge came through most powerfully there, quite obviously. But soft skills really are increasingly important in the mix, and I think that's perhaps soft skills. We can debate the terms, they do include those things like being a good communicator, being a good team worker, the sort of things we are talking about. It might include resilience, problem solving, that sort of thing. But then the technical knowledge, I guess, is becoming less and less of a part of this because of that need to constantly think about changing your skill set, changing your technological knowledge or technical knowledge, given the rapid pace of change in industry. In terms of people's perceptions of what skills are most important for employability, you can see the mix moves as per you, Doug, moves much more towards those softer skills. I guess, as you say, employers themselves will recognize that need for lifelong learning, that need for on-the-job work. They want that broader, softer set. And then in terms of which skill set is the most challenging to teach, the very skills we're talking about are increasingly important. I think it's quite an interesting section there, isn't it, in terms of institution priorities, employer priorities, and then actually the stuff that's toughest to get right. And it goes right back to that question around the traditional degree versus the micro-credentials and almost some sort of marriage between the two, the lifelong learning, constant upskilling, but the broader education that comes. So maybe we could take that slide away and let's have a conversation about it. I can see, Patrick, you want to come in on that. What's your response to that information?
Well, I think the survey result pretty much matches what Doug said before, but I think it's hard to generalize this because it also depends a lot on the exact discipline. So if you work in engineering or science, whatever, you need the academic and the technical skills, and it will take 5 years or 10 years, whatever, to learn that, and you will need that on the job. If you maybe work more in business and other fields, maybe the focus can be different. Nonetheless, I agree that soft skills are essential. For example, I teach artificial intelligence, and AI is a very hot topic, but the sad reality is that about 80% of the AI prototypes in industry fail. They don't add any value, so it's a lot of experimentation. The graduates and AI experts have excellent technical skills, but finally the stuff just gets stuck. It's not being turned into products that work. So for example, I designed a new course that I call Innovation Management for Artificial Intelligence. So I teach my students what they need to do beyond AI engineering so that their prototypes will finally add value to a company. So they need to understand how to analyze business processes. They learn about organizational challenges in a company, financial challenges. And we discussed that in my course. And so far, I got very positive feedback from my students because they also work on a case study on how they would solve certain challenges like this in a company. And finally, they have to add value. So I think it's really important that especially students in engineering and science also learn about innovation management so they can finally add real value and not just build prototypes.
Thank you. Doug, I can see your hand raised, but I might just turn quickly first to Anastasia and then come back to you. Anastasia, you want to comment? I'd also like to maybe, on the back of your comments, Patrick, talk about the role of interdisciplinarity. I've been beating the drum for arts and humanities, even when we're looking at very specific technical advancements in society, AI, that need for understanding our own humanity, understanding ethics, philosophy, history, that really come into fore when we're actually challenged by technological change that is really changing society, changing our sense of who we are. So I'd love to talk about interdisciplinarity as well, but Anastasia, please come in.
Yes, I would like to comment about the survey results. Certainly for technical universities, our university, also soft skills is quite important. And really our graduates understand it very deeply because they come to us, even the office which deal with internationalization and foreign partners, and speak that it's quite necessary to install such kind of global competence or global skills in order to move, make different kind of mobility efforts and so on. That's why it's really quite important to develop soft skills, so even for engineers. And if you would like to improve, for example, technical skills or technological skills, now it's also very convenient. We can install or we can connect to real equipment, and now such kind of virtual lab is very popular, for example, for our university, when we have very high technological equipment and our students can use it and could work with this equipment in a real life. That's why certainly we have to be in a very frontal spheres of knowledge and of science. But now it's up to us. Everything is possible. But soft skills is quite important, and I would like to underline it because really it's such kind of necessity for our students, and I see it.
Thank you. Doug, please come back in, and then I'll start moving on to some of the audience questions, actually.
Absolutely. No surprise for me in terms of those results. And it's, again, fascinating to see it. And it's interesting because we've had research for over 10 years that have been telling us the same thing. And yet here we are as governments and the media talking about skills overly, too much, when actually, if you actually took, because we won't get into the debate about whether soft skills is a good term or not, but imagine just take that label off for a moment and put on attitude and behavior on those graphs. All of a sudden, you'll see the majority of people aren't even talking about skills. So all this focus on when you actually unpack it, what we really want is there's a problem in the translation here. And this is an issue when you then try to take the theoretical to the practical at an institutional strategic level or a sector level, and you try and engage research-focused colleagues in a debate about skills, you're going to lose them from the very beginning. And actually what we're talking about is learning and teaching in different contexts. And just by reframing it, we'd have a better chance of getting the connection, which I will argue has been lacking and we've been failing to achieve, generally speaking, since the 60s. So I think that shift is so crucial. And the evidence from the survey is that people are saying these things are important. Employers would say that they're hiring and promoting for those things. And it's like I said, but to emphasize again, we have a body of literature that supports this and has done for a decade, and there's a disconnect. And I would argue as well, and there's an opportunity here for you, Phil, and the Times Higher, in terms of metrics. We need, if we want this soft skills to be valued more, we need to pull on expertise around the world. And there are obviously diagnostics and psychometric tests and ways of measuring resilience and self-efficacy and other things. We need some metrics that value this more if we want it to be seen as something as credible and as important as subject knowledge and the technical skills. So I think there's a collective responsibility here to figure this out.
Thank you. Very good point. And yeah, certainly the baton passed to Times Higher. We'll certainly have a look at that. Renata, I see your hand raised as well. Please do come in. Oh, sorry, you're muted, unfortunately.
Very sorry. Yes, thank you very much. I would like to really support what Doug said. I think the trouble also is that when the discussion over soft skills at university started a couple of years ago, here also in the Czech Republic, it was kind of meant to be added to the academic knowledge. And I think this is crucially flawed. I think the soft skills, such as attitudes, including, could be part of conveying academic and specialist knowledge. So what we are now working on is how to upskill also the pedagogical skills of academics and researchers, how to teach in different ways, because we don't think it much sense to add extra digital skills to what students have or teamwork. We think that the specialist subjects, the courses, should be taught through teamwork and through digital skills, including digital humanities. And I think the online period, the emergency online period helped with that, because when students came back to school in September 2021, they actually asked for that, because they thought, well, just to sit and listen to somebody, I could be at home and use my computer. And when I am to come to the classroom, I would expect to actually interact with others and work together with others. So in other words, taking multiple perspectives and using soft skills while acquiring the necessary technical skills and knowledge.
Thank you. I'm going to move to some, I'll definitely come to you, Hussein, in a minute, but maybe I'll frame it in the context of an audience question. I want to cram in some audience questions. I see there's great chat going on. Please do keep communicating through the chat. But one of the questions that's come through from an anonymous attendee, actually, would there be a move towards degrees which are more open when they start and later on specializing into specific disciplines based on the skills development? So one of the things I've noticed actually in Singapore, the National University of Singapore has a situation when you enroll, you're enrolled for 20 years. They absolutely understand that you may graduate with a degree, but they will welcome you back for 2 more decades to come. Is that a potential model, that we actually have a broad-based degree, interdisciplinary, problem-solving, teamwork, that will address these character issues, soft skill issues? And then you actually constantly need to return to learning with your updating your actual technical level skills to deliver what employers need. Is that a model? I know that's obviously something that Coursera can facilitate, but Hussein, please do come in on that.
And but before to come to this topic, I would like to say that I totally agree with Dr. Kroll, because not only because some years ago we had very nice project with Nottingham Trent University in our business school, but just because he is absolutely correct when telling that universities should not following industry just for employability formally. In opposite, probably universities must drag industry in the right direction, and it must be in capacity to do that. And from other side, when we talk about soft skills, he's absolutely correct with telling that, for example, passion of a potential employee, is it a product of soft skill? He must be maybe well understand where he will work, should understand that he loves it. He wants to see all his life in this sector. And in this, again, university can help him. And it's why maybe from early years, students has to visit different workplaces and to understand where his knowledge is and his desire, his insight is going accordingly hand to hand. And from this point, for example, are some soft skills, for example, how to write professional CV. A lot of companies, online providers or different centers offer to students this skill to write nice CVs, where they are professional describing what actually needed by industry. And it's annoying when you, as we are as a university employing a lot of people as well. So it's annoying when in a couple of months you discover that this person is not seeing himself in this environment and is not happy to be here. He has just short-term purposes to join to this team and to find himself in the future. And you just wasting his lifetime and your time, etc. So maybe here we must be very selective as well. Maybe universities need to create atmosphere when these soft skills mostly will come just on the way of the educational process. And yeah. I don't know, do I have time to come back to what you mentioned?
Come in quickly. Yeah, we're into the last 15 minutes, and there's lots of questions coming through. But please do give a response to that question.
Sorry, can you remind me the question? So.
Yeah, I've just deleted it, but I think it was basically about the idea of, is there a model which says that you start with a very open degree and then you narrow it down? And I think that's obviously a model that we see in the US in many cases, where very broad getting narrower. But I was almost pushing it beyond that to say the lifelong learning model, where your degrees might be necessarily extremely broad, interdisciplinary, really working on the character issues that Doug and Renata have spoken about.
In atmosphere, when you're teaching your students to work in team from the very beginning, then maybe in some areas very narrow specialization would have a meaning, would work. Otherwise, of course, interdisciplinary approach would be more effective for not only employability of students in the future, but for needs of industry as well, based on tasks which you will be challenged to work with. He maybe gradually will turn himself into a more specialized professional, working in certain teams in different places. But at the universities, probably more productive would be to my opinion, our experience says that to train students in an interdisciplinary approach, when he will be easily able to switch from one to other sub directions, when he needs to find the right atmosphere, right team, to tackle the problems which he will be challenged by. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to combine a couple of questions because they're reasonably practical, really, for you, DK. Sylvia Polino has just generically said, curious to learn more about the partnership with Coursera for micro-credentials, so how universities and Coursera combine on micro-credentials. But also Jennifer Murphy, forgive me, said, at Coursera, how do you reconcile the process for quality assurance, which tends to be slow and layered in universities, with the need for agility and flexibility to develop curricula quickly and innovatively? So two slightly different questions, but I thought you could maybe grab them both, DK, if that's all right with you.
Sure. Well, from a quality assurance perspective, I mean, we've put together a number of protocols which are designed to jointly ensure that the quality of the course is obviously extremely high. And in many cases, obviously, with the partner industries that we work with, they've already got their own quality assurance processes, which are extremely stringent and extremely strong anyway. In terms of how we sort of amalgamate the content and the programs and offering into universities and institutions, we have currently on the platform, we have around 170 or so different university partners and around 60 industry partners, culminating in around 6,500 different courses across 11 different domains. But what we critically do is that we have an entire team based on a global basis called our skills transformation experts, who actually work with faculty and the bodies within these institutions to actually assign relevant courses as part of their curricula. So again, we don't simply expect every single person within an institution to go through all 7,000 different sort of line items of courses that we offer. Of course, there are going to be specific areas which are going to be tied into specific faculty. So it's an organic process which changes over time. The curations are very detailed in partnership with the university.
Thank you. Another sort of more profound one that I think maybe I'll turn to you, Mark, first and then open it up. But Ahmed Al-Gadini has asked, are universities ready for the social and economic transformations due to the fourth industrial revolution and employment skills shift? So very much generic question. Are we actually ready to deal with the profound changes that will come through the fourth industrial revolution? And I'd love to hear your views, Patrick, as well, with that AI focus in your work. But Mark, please go ahead.
Okay, I think if we think at the heart of the fourth industrial revolution and digital transformation is humans, digital transformation is not going to happen unless we have digitally literate people, people in jobs, students, academics. And so I think what I'm observing from the sector as we look to come out of the pandemic, hopefully, is a kind of a renewed focus on ensuring that we do close that gap. And I totally agree with Doug. We've been chatting about these issues for many, many years, and I think now, the urgency for that transformation is happening. And so I think, are universities ready to that? Yes, I think they can be. Universities are learning organizations. And I think what I'm seeing is a kind of a coming together of institutions thinking about this, and actually a new willingness to collaborate with industry, to work with partners, to support, to do that. And we're definitely seeing that through our work with universities through the Creative Campus program, and with other partners as well to support that. So yeah, I'm really hopeful, and I'm really that I think this will happen.
Nice and optimistic. So Patrick, do you want to come in on this? I feel that AI is the sort of big scary beast that everyone imagines could be a dystopian nightmare future or profoundly positive, but just that sense of readiness for that very different future.
Well, I think it depends on the individual universities. The ones that are close to industry are certainly at the forefront of AI innovation, because AI keeps evolving very rapidly. So if you're not connected to industry as a university, you have a problem, because the stuff that was taught 10 years ago in AI, some of that is probably not that relevant anymore. But I also think professors need to rethink teaching. So we should not just teach AI, but also include AI in our teaching. So we should use modules that we can customize to individual students' needs. And I don't think every professor should redesign every single course from scratch. Because if you look at foundation courses like algorithms and data structures, mathematics, whatever, they're fantastic courses on Coursera or some of your competitors as well. And professors should also be efficient. So I think we should include more courses, for example, from Coursera in our curriculum, so that we can actually focus on the high-end stuff. For example, top-notch AI courses, whatever, but I should then spend less time on the foundation courses because they don't change that much anymore. And they're excellent courses on Coursera taught by world-leading professors. I think professors should be open to that they should also include someone else's courses in their courses, and then they can actually focus on the things in which they need to be most innovative. For example, a top-notch computer vision course, whatever. And even there are plenty of courses on Coursera, and maybe some of those units can be integrated in my course then.
Thank you. DK, you want to come back in?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think, it's very easy, I think, for all of us to talk about, obviously, supporting the students, the future of work, etc., from a student or graduate perspective. But ultimately, if there's one thing that I think has been very much sort of undervalued over these past 20 months from a higher education perspective, is the effect and the struggles of which faculty have had to go through as well. I mean, they have had to address experiences and approaches which typically a lot of them, given the duration of time that a lot of faculty members are obviously with institutions, that they've never had to address in the past. And it's that sort of, reskilling and almost upskilling as well, which applies very much to people who are responsible for teaching the future. And as Patrick said, I think, it's not exactly about completely reinventing the wheel, but it is also about ensuring that the faculty have the development and the means and the support that they need to address the very issues that they're going to be expected to be teaching towards, like the fourth industrial revolution, which a lot of aspects of that topic are here and now and are affecting our very lives.
Thank you very much. So we're into the last 5 minutes. I just want to say to the audience that we will be publishing a recording of this event. It will be available on demand after the meeting, and we also will be writing up a summary article of the conversations. You will all be receiving a link to the recording and the article. I'm going to squeeze in one last question in the last 5 minutes and ask for volunteers. It's from Gabriel Sotres, forgive my pronunciation, Gabriel or Gabriel. Any ideas on how to help governments to understand and support the rapid changes taking place? Gabriel writes from Italy, heavily regulated in what a university can and cannot do, that governments perhaps are behind the curve in terms of what's required. Would anyone like to offer an idea? Doug, please do come in.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, and it does beg the where are governments and the leaders, senior leaders in this space, where are they getting their advice, where are they getting their guidance from, and what's their source of truth about what the real challenge is? Because for me, again, there's a complete disconnect, and there are people that could really help, and I don't feel like they're getting a voice, and obviously the media, people like Times High, could actually play a role in supporting that and bringing together voices and perhaps, yeah, getting heard, because definitely there's a tendency for governments to look at other countries and what they're doing. I know that we did some work in the Gulf region a while ago, and they were very much looking at the Singapore approach, and not to criticize the Singapore approach, but it's very skills focused again, and for me, the biggest thing that whilst I'm on this planet, I'd like to try and challenge still is just to diversify and broaden that language out and get us to focus on what it is to be human. And there are so many different voices out there that are supporting that. There's research supporting that. It's not just me. And I think that's the bit that needs to get translated to government. And I've been in, for you, the inside government, all these kinds of talks where you have MPs chairing sessions, and you continually challenge the skill. I mean, if we counted how many times skills were said today, it would be several hundred. And we need to challenge that narrative. And that's, for me, are we focusing on the right things? Because for me, it's been going on too long. It's decades and decades of talking about the same thing. And it's just, yes, time for change.
I think that's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because certainly in the United Kingdom, a lot of the narrative about universities is very utilitarian in terms of first jobs rather than job resilience. It's about salaries on graduation. It's is quite narrow in that.
Just to jump back in, well, what we need is, if we focus on the things that I'm talking about and that we should value, actually that's really more aligned with what a lot of academics believe is the purpose of education. And so these arguments about neoliberal kind of approaches to, getting students jobs, and that's all it's about, supporting the economy. I said that there's unnecessary tensions, because actually job is just one outcome of being a good person. And hopefully relationships, or the other part, mental health, all of those things come into play here. And I think, again, the language piece is crucial in this space, because it's causing unnecessary tensions and divides, and the employability agenda is seen as being something evil, when actually what all academics would want to see in terms of a good student, or what the purpose of higher education, there's synergies there, and it's just people's perceptions of, when you talk job and skills, it's too narrow. Let's broaden it out beyond that, and then we have a chance to come to the table and talk.
Thank you. I'm gonna be cheeky and squeeze one final question. It's a bit of a softball for you, DK, actually, from Bilal Qureshi. Would soft skills development remain with universities, or could it be taken over by platforms like Coursera? There does seem to be a difference. Say, you're focused on micro-credentials, upskilling, lifelong learning. The universities do the deep stuff that Doug's talked about. Is there a gap you can bridge? Can Coursera do that sort of core soft skills work as we've described it? Oh, I'm sorry, you're muted still.
Forgive me. You think after 20 months, you'd be used to undoing that. No, I think, across our 11 different domains, which covers, data science, business technology, but also life sciences, languages, and personal development. Absolutely. There are different levels, all the way from conversant all the way through to extremely advanced content that we have. But again, it's very much about applying the relevant content in the appropriate needed areas. Again, filling the potholes along the way, or in some cases for institutions, completely opening up the possibilities of new curricula, which the university or the institution may not have the faculty to actually deliver, which they want to branch out to. So yes, I mean, I don't think they would certainly be taken over by one element of Coursera. I think there are multiple avenues in which there can be smaller, larger, more specific interventions by the content that we provide.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm frustrated because there's so many fantastic topics of conversation, and we haven't heard anywhere near enough from all of you. We should have perhaps had another hour or so, but I think the most important thing is that we will share the content of this. We will write up an article about this. But I hope also we could continue these conversations through Times Higher Education, not just through our editorial, but through our events. I'd love to invite the panelists back to other conversations, perhaps more narrow, focused, And of course, the audience, you've all been incredibly engaged. It's been great to see all the conversations happening in the chat. So we'll make sure those conversations continue through Times Higher Education and in partnerships with Coursera. So I just want to give everyone on the panel a massive thank you for giving your time and sharing your expertise in such a tight environment, but it's been great to get all those thoughts down, and also thank the audience for wonderful interaction and engagement. So thanks everybody very much indeed. We've now come to the end of the session. Thank you.